This kind goeth not out, but by silence. My friends, let us pause before we begin, not to think, not to prepare the mind, not to gather strength, but to release it, to drop from that Tower of Babel, which we have so carefully constructed out of good thoughts, positive thoughts, spiritual affirmations. Let it go. Because there comes a time in every spiritual life, and it comes sooner for those who are sincere, when none of these things will help, when the affirmations are dry, when the truths you memorized are hollow, when your treatment, which worked for others, is met with silence, and the case remains. The condition persists. The fear does not yield. This is not failure. This is the gate. Now, many of you have experienced success with spiritual truth. You've witnessed the power of the word when spoken from a place of authority and clarity. You've seen the quickening in another's consciousness. You've seen healings, and you have said, this is the way, and for a time it is. But then the day comes when the word no longer works, when you say, God is all, and the condition answers, no, I am here too. And you say, but I know the truth, and yet the evidence does not flee. And again, I say to you, this is not failure. This is the gate. This is when spirit begins to take over. You see, it is written, for the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. And what is the letter? The truth you know with your mind, the truths you've collected, printed, quoted, but spirit is something else entirely. Spirit is not what you know. Spirit is what is. And this gate, it looks like defeat, but it is not defeat. It is invitation. And so we return to that most mysterious passage in the Master's teachings, when the disciples, having failed to heal, said, why could not we cast it out? And Jesus answered, this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting. Now, I know the theologians have interpreted that in many ways, and the churches have made it into ritual and ascetic practice, but we are not seeking God through ritual, and we are not seeking demonstration through sacrifice. We are seeking God as God is, not as what man has made of him. So let us hear again. This kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting. Prayer, true prayer, is not asking. It is communion. And fasting, in the spiritual sense, is not the denial of food, but the fasting from thought, from effort, from self. Why is it that sometimes when you sit down with a treatment, nothing happens? Why is it that you declare the truth and the truth lies still, lifeless, like a cold wind across the sea? Because, my friends, you were never meant to bring God forth with your thought. God does not come because you know the right words. God does not act because you said the right verse. Not by might nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. Do you see? There are moments, sacred moments, when Spirit itself says, now let me take over. And what must you do in those moments? You must become as nothing, empty, silent, without agenda, without memory, without plan. This is the beginning of prayer and fasting. The Master did not heal by force. He did not treat with argument. He did not try to change appearances. He looked up and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me. He did not say, I hope you will. He did not beg. He did not ask. He knew, and so must we come to that place where we no longer depend on knowing, but on being known, where we no longer recite truth, but enter the silence where truth is. Yes, There are problems, deep ones, cases that linger, patterns that repeat. And sometimes you say, I have done everything. I have declared the truth. I have denied the claim. I have known the one power, the one presence. Why is it still here? And again I say, this is not failure. This is grace. Because when nothing works, you must stop working. And in the stopping, in the emptying out, in the release of all self-effort, something begins. And it is not yours. It is not your mind. It is not your strength. It is the Spirit of God moving upon the waters. And that is why I say to you today, do not be afraid of the place where truth no longer helps. Do not fear the silence. Do not dread the darkness. For it is written, the people that sat in darkness have seen a great light, and so it will be with you. You must come to the gate where your words are not welcome. And then you will hear the voice. Now, you may ask, why is it that some cases yield quickly to the word of truth, and others do not move, do not stir, as if untouched by spirit? And I must answer you in a way that may surprise you. It has nothing to do with the person. It has nothing to do with their merit, their understanding, their moral conduct, and it has even less to do with your powers or capacities as a practitioner. It has to do with atmosphere, with consciousness, with what Paul called the prince of the power of the air. You see, the whole human race is under a kind of spell, not cast by a magician, but arising from centuries of belief in good and evil, health and disease, success and failure, and above all, a God who rewards and punishes. And so what we face in certain cases is not a person, not a condition, but a pressure, an atmosphere of belief that clings like fog and will not lift through words or will. And that is why sometimes nothing seems to respond. You speak truth, you deny appearances, you declare one power, and yet it does not go. Not because it is strong, but because you are still addressing it as if it were a power. And as long as you react, even with spiritual concern, it remains. Now, the Master said, judge not according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. But how can you judge righteously if the condition fills your thought, if the appearance becomes your reality? You must understand this. In the infinite way, we do not deal with the patient's condition. We do not analyze it, probe it, uncover some so-called hidden cause, because all of that is built on a false premise that there is something there to treat. And so we rise above that. We deal with the principle. When you are confronted with a case that does not respond, do not go deeper into the mind. Do not reach back into the patient's childhood. Do not say, well, perhaps this is karmic. Do not say, maybe they are blocking their good. That is metaphysical psychology, not spiritual truth, and we have left that behind. No, what we are dealing with is impersonal belief, and sometimes that belief is deeply rooted not in the person, but in the collective consciousness of the race. It is the atmosphere of fear, of guilt, of helplessness. It is what the Apostle Paul meant when he said, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. You see, the moment you say, this is my patient's problem, or worse, this is my responsibility, you come under the same mesmerism. You are now entangled in the claim, and you cannot heal what you have made real. And so I say to you, when a case does not respond, be very still. Do not react. Do not retreat into fear or frustration. Do not start searching your mind for some truth you may have forgotten. Instead, acknowledge this. This is not a person. This is not a condition. This is a universal belief without law, without cause, without mind, and without power. And rest there. The healing does not come because you said that truth. It comes because in resting there, you have made room for God to be God. You have ceased trying to be a healer, and you have become a witness. Remember the words of Isaiah. Ye are my witnesses, saith the Lord, and my servant whom I have chosen, that ye may know and believe me, and understand that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. You are not sent to fight evil. You are not here to correct appearances. You are not here to bring about improvement. You are here to witness the presence of God, where the world sees only lack. And sometimes, to witness that, you must go into the deepest silence, not a silence of sound, but a silence of reaction, a silence of judgment, a silence of thought, because this appearance of entrenched belief, of death, of failure, of incurability goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. And that is the great mystery. Some appearances yield because the truth spoken finds a little crack and light rushes in. But others must wait until the storm in your own soul is quieted, until you are no longer trying to help, no longer trying to heal, no longer trying to do anything but be still and know. And so I tell you again, no condition is incurable, but some conditions require you to die to every method, every word, every thought of healing. And then and only then the healing appears, not because you did something, but because you did nothing, and God was there. And now let us go a little deeper, because once you've seen that some conditions do not yield to truth as easily as others, the temptation is great, and the temptation is this, to try harder. Yes, I know, we've all done it. We've sat longer in the chair. We've repeated more affirmations. We've reread our favorite chapters. We've tried to outlast the problem with more truth, more discipline, more effort. But let me say to you, with the utmost tenderness and compassion, trying harder is the great mistake. Not because your effort is wrong in itself, but because effort belongs to the human mind, and the healing does not take place in the human mind. It is not born of your will, nor your understanding, nor your determination. It is not even the reward of your sincerity. It is the movement of God within, and that movement cannot be forced. It cannot be hastened. It cannot be earned. It must be yielded to. You see, my friends, when you begin trying harder, you reveal something about your consciousness. You are saying, God is not yet here. I must bring him. You are saying, truth is not yet established. I must affirm it more deeply. And in that very saying, in that posture, you are rejecting the truth you claim to know. For if God is infinite, if God is omnipresent, if God is the very life of your being, then what must you do to bring healing? Nothing, absolutely nothing, except to be still. Let us remember again what the Master said. I can of mine own self do nothing, but the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. And yet, how often we try to do the works ourselves, and then we wonder why the healing delays. It delays because we have pushed God aside and placed ourselves at the center of the practice. Yes, I know that this goes against everything the world teaches. The world teaches that the more effort you exert, the greater the reward. The world teaches that you must pray harder, believe more fervently, fast longer, confess more deeply. But this is not the way of the Spirit. The way of the Spirit is not a climbing up, but a surrendering down. Not more effort, but less self. Not more doing, but more being. Remember this. Every time you exert mental effort to get something, healing, supply, peace, you affirm separation. And separation is the only sickness there is. Your iniquities have separated between you and your God, said the prophet Isaiah. And what is that iniquity? It is not sin in the traditional sense. It is believing you and God are two. The moment you try harder, you have declared, God is there and I am here. God has the answer and I must reach it. And in that thought, healing is delayed not by God, but by your own sense of distance. But there is no distance. Paul did not say, work harder for Christ. He said, Christ in you, the hope of glory. The hope is not in effort, but in realization, in the recognition of what already is. And so when the thought comes, maybe I need to pray more, ask instead, am I praying from separation or from union? When you think, I must declare more truth, ask, am I declaring truth from fear or from rest? Because only in stillness is the Father heard. Only in the emptiness of effort does the Spirit fill the soul. I have had cases, many cases, where the more I tried, the further the healing moved, and it was only when I stopped, when I sat back in that chair, put down the books, closed the treatment, and said nothing, that something began to stir. And it was not a stirring of the mind, it was a presence. And then the words came, be still and know that I am God. Not your effort, not your knowledge. I am God, and I was always here. And so I say to you, when you feel that rise within you to double your efforts, pause and remember that God does not yield to your effort. God appears where you have disappeared. And until that happens, you will chase results with sacred words and never touch the silence where healing lives. Stop trying harder. Let it be. Let it unfold. Let God have His perfect work. Now let us look quietly and deeply at what the Master meant when he said, this kind goeth not out, but by prayer and fasting. These are words that have been repeated in churches for centuries, and yet the meaning has largely been lost, buried beneath ritual and effort and tradition. We are not interested in outer forms. We are not seeking another formula. We are not returning to the mountaintop to bring down more commandments. We are seeking God, and God alone, not for what He can do, but for what He is. And so we ask, what is prayer and what is fasting? Not what we have been told, not in the human sense. Prayer, as the world knows it, is often a petition, a request. Give me, heal me, save them. And the Master said plainly, your Father knoweth what things ye have need of before ye ask Him. Why then do we ask? No, real prayer is not asking. Real prayer is communion. It is the opening of the soul to God, not the mouth. It is the inner stillness that allows the infinite to flow. True prayer is not words. It is not thoughts. It is not even your desire for God. It is your surrender. Prayer is the act of letting God be God in your being. It is the yielding of your will, your mind, your power. It is the end of all resistance. It is not what you say, it is what you cease to say. And fasting? It is not abstaining from bread or water. It is abstaining from thought, from the thoughts of good and evil, right and wrong, health and sickness. Fasting is the refusal to eat the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is the withdrawal from the mental activity that seeks to fix, to adjust, to change appearances. It is the silencing of the desire to make anything different than what it is. You fast not from food, but from judgment, from mental interference, from spiritual ambition. It is this prayer, this fasting, that opens the heavens. Now you may wonder, why is this necessary? Why is this the only way some conditions dissolve? Because the human mind, even the spiritually trained mind, will always try to preserve a sense of me. I am the one declaring truth. I am the one treating. I am the practitioner. And as long as there is an I, even a spiritual I, the door remains closed. Only when you decrease, when all of you recedes into stillness, does he increase. And so the prayer that heals is not a treatment. It is not something you do. It is the space you allow. It is not what you think. It is when thinking stops. That is why I have said before, and will say again, you can take no thought for your life. Take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, but seek ye first the kingdom of God. And how do you seek the kingdom? Not by effort, not by study, not by repetition. You seek the kingdom by becoming empty enough to be filled. This is what the psalmist meant when he wrote, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. You see, he waited. He did not command. He did not perform. He waited. That is prayer. That is fasting. And this is not just for mystics and saints. This is for anyone who has come to the end of doing and is willing to be still. It is for anyone who has said, I cannot fix this. I cannot improve this, but I can stand still and behold the salvation of the Lord. For it is written, the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. That is what we are learning here, how to hold our peace. Not mentally, spiritually, not in silence of mouth, but silence of self. So when you are faced with a condition that will not yield, do not treat harder, do not declare louder, do not panic. Go into prayer and fasting, which is to say, go into inner stillness and mental abstinence. Let everything go. Let the need go. Let the appearance go. Let the truth go, until nothing remains but God as God is, and then the healing appears, not because you made it happen, but because you stopped trying to make it happen. Now let us sit very quietly for a moment, not to hear something, not to receive something, but just to be. That is the foundation of this next part of the teaching, entering silence without expectation. You see, the great hindrance to spiritual realization is not ignorance, nor sin, nor error. It is the subtle belief that God is to be used, that God is to serve some purpose in our human experience. And so we say to ourselves, I will meditate to get peace, or I will be still so that healing may come. But I must say to you with great gentleness and firmness, as long as you enter silence to get something, you have not entered silence at all. You have entered with a hidden agenda, and in that agenda, the soul cannot open. The silence of God is not a tool for demonstration. It is not a gateway to better condition. It is the very presence of that which was and and is to come. It is not meant to change your life, it is your life. And so when we enter the silence, we must not enter with the idea that something must happen. We must enter without motive, without thought, without reward. We enter because it is the nature of our being to be one with God, and silence is the only place where that union is known. So I ask you, when you come to that place where nothing works, do not come into meditation looking for release. Do not enter silence hoping for a click, a word, a healing, or an answer. Come to the silence as the Master came to the mountain, not to change the world, but to commune with the Father. I do nothing of myself, he said, but as my Father hath taught me, I speak these things. And again, I speak that which I have seen with my Father. He did not speak what he studied. He did not act upon what he hoped. He waited in the stillness until something moved, not in his mind, but in his being. And then, and only then, did he speak. That is your example. You see, God cannot be coaxed or provoked or brought into visibility by emotional longing or mental force. God is never absent, but our awareness of God is veiled by our desire for outcome. The moment we want healing, we have made something more important than God. The moment we want peace or supply or reconciliation, we have brought a second presence into the temple. And Scripture tells us, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Even your desire for spiritual experience can become a god. Even your hunger for realization can become a veil. So I say to you, when you go into the silence, go without expectation. Go without hope. Go without need. Say nothing. Ask for nothing. Think nothing. Just be still. It may happen that nothing is heard. No inner voice. No light. No release. And the temptation will come. This is not working. But I say to you, that thought is the working of the mind that still wants a result. Let it pass. Let it dissolve. Because something is happening. You see, the Spirit moves silently, like the wind that bloweth where it listeth. You cannot see it, nor control it, but it is there. And when you are still, you begin to feel what you cannot explain, a sense of rest, a softening, a loosening of the tension of your selfhood. And then, perhaps much later, you may look up and realize the healing has come, the fear is gone, the condition is no longer present, but you will not know when it happened, because it happened in God's time, not yours. This is the way of grace. And this is why we do not bring our shopping lists into the silence. We do not bring our affirmations. We do not bring our questions. We bring emptiness. The Master said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." The poor in spirit are those who have nothing left, no truth to lean on, no knowledge to declare, no power to call upon. And in that emptiness, the allness of God is known. So let us now approach this silence not as a means, but as the end, not as a technique, but as a sacred abiding, not to get, but simply to be. Because in that stillness, in that true prayer and fasting, the crooked places are made straight, the rough places plain, and the glory of the Lord is revealed. Not because we asked for it, not because we earned it, but because God is, and that is enough. Now we come to that which has no name, yet once experienced is never forgotten. It is what I sometimes call the click. It is not a technique. It is not a point in time you can predict. It is not a thing you can make happen. And yet when it comes, you see, we sit in silence, not to get anything, not even to get this, and yet there are moments, sacred, uncaused, when something happens. There is a shift, a release, a lightness of being. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you do not, but it is there. And when it comes, you do not need to ask, is the work done? You know you have touched, or rather, been touched. This is the moment of God contact. It is written, "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee." And what does it mean to stay the mind on God? Not to think about God, but to remain in that inner stillness where God is not a thought at all, but presence. This presence comes not through mental activity. It does not come because you affirm or deny or quote or even meditate well. It comes because you are empty and there is room for God to be God. And in that emptiness, the Father speaks. You may not hear it as a voice. You may not see a vision. You may feel nothing. But suddenly the burden is gone. The concern disappears. The pressure lifts. And you are left with a sense of, it is well. Do not try to define this moment. Do not explain it. Do not analyze it. It is not yours to understand. It is yours to trust. This is the Lord speaking in a still, small voice. It may be nothing more than a sense of deep rest. It may come in a breath, in a glance, in a wordless knowing. But when it comes, you will not wonder if God has heard. You will not need to check the condition. You will not measure the response. You will know, as the Master knew before the raising of Lazarus, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. That is the moment we call the click. Now, let me be clear. The click is not the goal. It is the fruit of your abiding. You cannot bring it forth. You cannot time it. You cannot command it. But you can be in the place where it may happen. That place is stillness without expectation. That place is prayer without words, fasting without struggle. That place is the absence of self. And sometimes you will sit and nothing will seem to come, and still you must sit, because even in the silence that seems barren, something is working, something is moving beneath the surface. The tree does not bear fruit because you look at it. It bears fruit in its own season, and the season of spirit is not yours to control. But when that click comes, everything changes, not outwardly at first, but inwardly. You no longer care if the healing is visible. You no longer wait for the phone call to confirm it, something deeper. The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him, and you are that temple. From this place, healing flows, not as an act, not as a demonstration, but as the natural result of God realized. Where there was fear, peace appears. Where there was pain, comfort arises. Where there was lack, sufficiency unfolds. And yet, you did nothing. You did not heal. You did not change anything. You simply stood still until the Father spoke, not in words, but in that deep, sacred silence that does not need to be explained. So I say to you, do not seek the click. Do not wait for it. Do not try to make it happen. Let it come when it will, and if it does not, rest anyway. That resting is your obedience. That stillness is your worship. And whether you feel anything or not, God is present in that place. And sometimes, in the most unexpected moment, in the most ordinary silence, you will realize the work is done. And it will be. Now, having touched even momentarily that presence which is not of this world, you may ask a very natural question. If the contact was made, why hasn't anything changed? And here again, I must invite you to enter into a deeper understanding of the nature of spiritual reality. Because, you see, the healing that occurs in God is not always visible in the moment. It is not a transaction. It is not a magic act. It is not a bargain fulfilled. The healing, when it is of God, is a transformation of consciousness, and it unfolds as consciousness is prepared to receive it, not before. It is written in the book of Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season and a time, to every purpose under the heaven. And this includes the season of ripening, of maturing, of releasing hidden fears, of letting go of ancient beliefs. You cannot demand fruit the day after planting the seed. It must die in the earth, unseen, undisturbed, and only then, when the season is right, does the first tender sprout appear. You may have already entered the silence. You may have felt the click. You may have rested in that holy presence, and yet, to your eyes, the outer scene is unchanged. And I say to you, do not touch the outer scene. Do not dig up the soil to check on the seed. Do not measure the fruit before it appears. Because when you do that, when you question the timing, you have stepped back into human judgment, and the stillness is broken. You are again reacting to appearances. But we have been told, judge not according to the appearance. And again, the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. So let me say plainly, the healing has already begun. In fact, it was complete the moment you ceased trying to bring it about, but its appearance will come when it no longer matters to you, whether it comes or not. The condition you thought needed healing was never the true issue. The true issue was your own belief in two powers, and once that belief was dissolved in silence, healing had already occurred, though not yet visible to the senses. And now, the fruit must ripen. The Master spoke the word to the fig tree and walked on. He didn't stand beside it to watch it wither. When he said, Lazarus, come forth, he did not then speak to Lazarus's illness. He did not examine whether the condition had improved. He gave thanks. He knew, and so must we. Sometimes the healing will come like lightning striking through the atmosphere in an instant, but often it comes like dawn, slowly, gradually, until suddenly you realize it is morning. Let it come. When you find yourself watching the condition, let the thought arise, I will not judge after the seeing of the eye, nor the hearing of the ear. Say within yourself, the Father worketh hitherto, and I rest. Rest, trust, wait without waiting, and if the condition lingers longer than you expected, rejoice. Not because of the condition, but because it gives you another opportunity to live in trust, to live in God, not in demonstration. For truly, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And so, let the healing unfold on its own terms. Do not interfere with the process of grace. Know only this: when you have made your contact, when the silence has been entered, and the sense of burden has dropped away, the rest is in God's hands. And no one who has ever entrusted a case to God, in silence, in surrender, in pure receptivity, has ever been forsaken. Now, while many healings are accomplished in the ordinary rhythm of spiritual practice, through the inner stillness, through resting in truth without reaction, there are times, rare but real, when nothing seems to move at all, and the appearance remains dark and unyielding. And it is in those moments that something within whispers, not loudly, but clearly, withdraw. This is not withdrawal from responsibility. This is not retreat into despair. This is not escape. This is not failure. It is obedience. Obedience to a law of spirit which says, "Come ye apart and rest a while." Not rest the body, rest the soul. Rest the soul from concern, from effort, from the very act of watching and waiting. You see, when a condition persists, and even your inner silence seems dry, what is really being asked of you is not more of the same, but less of everything. Less doing, less attending, even less spiritual activity. There are times when the only thing left is to remove yourself completely from the situation, not just physically, but inwardly. You must come to a place where you say, "I am not here to change this. I am not here to do anything about it. I am here to rest in God alone." Now that may mean closing your door for an hour or a night. Sometimes I have had to go away for 2 days, even 3, turn off the phone, close the blinds, take no mail, answer no calls, not because I had the solution, not because I was going to work on the case, but because I knew that I had become involved, and my involvement was standing in the way of God's freedom. You see, the most subtle form of resistance is spiritual concern. When you carry someone's condition in your mind, even with love, even with prayer, you are still affirming its presence. You are still holding it as something to be overcome. And in that, you are binding the situation to a dualistic premise that there is a condition and that God must do something about it. But we know, do we not, that God does not overcome evil. God is. And where God is, there is no evil to be overcome. So if we are still trying to heal something, we have not yet seen God clearly. And so, in these moments, we must withdraw from the very idea of helping. We must cease even to be a spiritual practitioner. We must leave behind the vocabulary of healing, of practice, of demonstration, of affirmation, and we must enter the Holy of Holies, not with truth in our mouth, but with emptiness in our soul. It is written, "The Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him." And in that silence, something takes place that you cannot cause. Something begins to shift, not because you asked, not because you treated, not because you prayed rightly, but because you were not there anymore. And God was. In these rare cases, you may not even feel the click. You may not receive a word, but suddenly, one morning you receive a message. Something has changed. Or perhaps you never hear the result, but inwardly you will know. The burden has passed through you, and it no longer rests upon you. These are sacred times. And I tell you truly, there are cases in which this total withdrawal is the only way, not because the condition is stronger, but because your personal sense of responsibility has become entangled in the situation. And until you remove yourself, the Spirit cannot move freely. So I ask you, if you are facing such a case, be it illness, loss, danger, relationship, go away, if only for a night. Go into the mountain, go into the garden, go into your own closet, and shut the door, and say, Father, into thy hands I commend this. I will not touch it. I will not think it. I will not work on it. I will only rest in thee. And if you must, do it again. Do not expect fireworks. Do not expect words, but you will find that something drops away. And what remains is not an improved condition, it is God alone. And that is enough. Now, my friends, we must come to a most humbling and liberating truth, a truth so simple, so final, that the human mind cannot grasp it, only the spirit within can recognize it. You have never healed anyone. Yes, you have witnessed healing. You have been present when the burden lifted, when the pain dissolved, when the so-called incurable reversed. You have seen the transformation, but you must know you were not the cause of it. The practitioner is never the healer. The truth you speak is never the power. The prayer you pray is never the agent. The treatment, the silence, the knowing, these are not causes. These are only instruments. And only as they are emptied of self do they allow the presence to appear. It is written, not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. And again, the Father that dwelleth in me, he doeth the works. You see, it is not the knowledge of truth that heals. If that were so, the world would be free by now. It is not correct metaphysical statements that bring about demonstration. It is not the practitioner's level of study, nor the hours in the silence, nor the purity of the words spoken. It is only one thing: God realized. When that realization dawns, not just known, not just recited, but truly felt and lived, then the healing appears. And so you may sit with a patient and speak no word, and yet they are healed. And you may work for hours with another affirming all that you know, and nothing changes. Why? Because the Spirit alone heals, and the Spirit is not subject to your schedule, your formulas, or your knowledge. This is the great secret that ends all pride and all fear. You are not the healer. You never were. You never will be. And so, if the healing does not appear, you are not responsible. And if it does appear, you do not deserve the credit. You are an empty vessel, and in your emptiness, God shines. Now, understand this. Truth is holy. It is sacred. It is eternal. But truth in the mind is only concept. It becomes power only when the Spirit breathes upon it, only when you are so still, so yielded, that the presence of God speaks that truth in you, as you, through you. You may have noticed this. There are times when you speak truth and you can feel it land. It has weight. It moves something unseen. And then there are other times when you speak the same truth, and it is like dust in the wind. Why? Because in the first, you were not there, only God was. And in the second, you were present with all your effort, all your sincerity, all your will, and God was waiting. You must come to this freedom. I have no power of myself. I have no truth of myself. I have no healing of myself. All that I am is a transparency through which the light of God may shine or not, as the Spirit willeth. And in this, you are free. You are free from the fear of failure. You are free from the pressure of result. You are free from the illusion that you must do something. You are free from the guilt of not doing enough, because now your only task is to be still, to know, to wait, to rest in the one who does the works. Paul knew this when he said, I live, Yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And again we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the excellency of the power may be of God and not of us. So, if someone comes to you with a need, do not rush to help. Do not leap to the books. Do not reach for the words. Enter the silence, not to perform, but to disappear, and let the Spirit take over. And when you see the healing, rejoice, but do not say, I helped. Say instead, the kingdom of God is within you, because truly God never left. And now, my beloved friends, we come to the close not of the message, for truth never ends, but of this part of our journey together. And what I ask of you is not to remember what I have said, nor to take notes, nor to study the words. I ask you only to do one thing: rest in God alone. This is the final word of every healing principle, every spiritual practice, every inner realization. Rest in God alone, not in the healing, not in the improvement, not in the appearance, not in whether the prayer was answered in time or whether the demonstration occurred as you imagined it, but rest in God as God is, and let all else fall away. You see, as long as your mind is fixed on the condition, whether it has changed, whether it will change, you are not resting. You are striving. You are watching. You are subtly waiting for the fruit to ripen so you may taste it and say, ah, it worked. But I tell you, you must reach the place where you no longer care whether it worked, because you have found something higher. You have found God as enough. And where God is, there is no worked or did not work. There is only is. The psalmist says, return unto thy rest, O my soul, for the Lord hath dealt bountifully with thee. And again, in returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. Can you see what this means? Not in activity, not in seeking, not in striving, but in quietness, in confidence, in rest. So I say to you now, whether you are facing a condition in the body, or a loss in the home, or unrest in the world, do not rush to heal it. Do not treat it. Do not even try to understand it. Let it be. And let your heart turn instead to the Father, not the Father who fixes problems, but the Father who is. Let the silence become your dwelling place. Let the inner temple be your refuge. Let your prayer be without words, and your treatment without aim. And if no voice speaks, and no sign appears, rejoice still, for it is in that very emptiness that the fullness of God is made manifest, not to the senses, but to the soul. You have not been asked to fix the world. You have not been asked to demonstrate perfection. You have been asked to abide in me, and let my word abide in you. And in that abiding, all things are added without your thought, without your effort. The moment you stop asking, you will know. The moment you stop waiting for the healing, you will realize, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And that, dear ones, is the final healing, the end of wanting. Not because all has been fulfilled outwardly, but because inwardly you have come home. You have found that place where there are no problems, because there is no second presence, only I. I and the Father are one. That is the only truth you ever need. And when that becomes your dwelling place, the world may rage, the body may falter, but you will stand still, and you will know God. And that is enough